Good morning, everyone. Today is Monday, April 6th, 2020. It's approximately 10 a.m. You're joined once again by the Family Law Matters legal team as we talk about legal separation today. I do want to remind our viewers, when you join in, please make sure that you are muted. If you have any questions, please make sure that you send them to me. We'll get them answered. And if you're unable to join, just remember, we're going to be posting these on all of our social media websites, along with YouTube, Facebook. So I'm going to give our legal panel an opportunity to introduce themselves, and then we'll get into legal separation. So Christy, I'm going to start with you. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yes, good morning, B. I hope everyone's doing well out there. My name is Christy Bergamo. I'm a senior family law attorney here at Family Law Matters. I have 17 years of family law experience. I have been certified to be minors counsel in the courts in California, which means I get appointed by judges to represent children. I've also sat judge pro tem in family law in Orange County, and I'm also an instructor at UCR for the paralegal program.
Awesome. Thank you, Christy. Gina, you're up.
Sure, I'm Gina Famularo. I'm a partner at Family Law Matters. I've been an attorney for 22 years, and I practiced 9 years in Orange County, all family law, 13 years in Riverside, also in family law.
Thank you, Gina. Colleen.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Colleen Robinson. I'm a family law attorney here at Family Law Matters. I've been an attorney now for 10 years, which still blows my mind every time I say it, and been practicing almost exclusively in family law here in Southern California, mostly in San Diego and Riverside County.
Thank you, Colleen. And I am Bishoy Shahada. I'm also an attorney, managing partner of Family Law Matters, and I've been an attorney for a little over 2.5 years. All I know is family law, so let's get to it. Legal separation. Gina, I'm going to start with you. Do I have to file, one of the most common questions we get is, do I have to file for a legal separation to be separated, legally separated?
No. Many people come into our office, as you know, Bishoy, and they ask us to file a legal separation. And the reason why they're asking for a legal separation is because they're not sure whether or not they really want a divorce. What I tell those people is that a divorce is a final act. I actually call myself an undertaker. What I tell people is, if you have a dead marriage, I will bury it. People who want a legal separation are not to the point that their marriage is dead. They're not to the point where there's no hope in the marriage. And what I counsel people is, if you were to come to us and hire us to file some sort of a legal action against your spouse, there's a good possibility that that will turn into a divorce, even if that's not what you're envisioning. So what I tell people is, do not seek legal counsel unless you're 100% sure that the relationship is over.
So let's talk about the difference between a legal separation and a divorce. What is the difference?
Sure, a legal separation and a divorce are almost exactly the same. You file paperwork with the court. You make orders for custody, visitation, child support, spousal support, division of property, division of debts, and attorney's fees. But at the end of the entire process, you're still married.
So, Christy, that was the logistical aspect of the process. Tell me about the benefits of filing for a legal separation.
The benefits are that sometimes there's circumstances that exist within your relationship that you don't necessarily want to be divorced from this person for very particular reasons. One of those could be health insurance, health benefits. If you're divorced, those benefits by operation cease to exist. So I've had clients who have significant health situations, for instance, cancer, something to that effect that requires a lot of medical treatment. And that would be one of the benefits of filing for legal separation, because you could stay on the insurance of the other spouse. Another benefit would be to protect assets. For instance, I get a lot that, you know, my spouse goes out and drives drunk all the time, and I don't want to be liable for those sorts of issues, and a legal separation would sever that liability. Another issue is protecting the length of the marriage. So say, for instance, being able to qualify for certain Social Security benefits. I believe it's a 10-year rule on that one. And then for military benefits, it's a 20-year rule on that one, for maintaining the marital status, but and so being able to qualify for those benefits. But I just want to go back briefly, B, if I may.
Of course.
I think that, and Gina made a very good distinction about being separated and then filing a legal separation. And I think that's a very, very clear distinction. And Gina said it best when she said, look, if you're just planning on separating from this person, a lot of times clients come in and say, do I have to file something to be separated? And I think the distinction is, no, you don't. When you need legal counsel is when you want to file that legal separation. And then again, for the reasons I've stated, the benefits of a legal separation.
So could you give us an example of someone who's filed for a legal separation?
Of who?
Of someone who's filed for a legal separation.
Like I said, the examples are someone who wants to protect, their health insurance coverage, someone who wants to protect assets, someone who wants to, for religious reasons, for instance. I get that a lot too. People who, by their faith, can't be divorced, but they want something that legally severs off their accountability or responsibility in the marriage itself. And it defines what is community assets, and we deal with those in a legal separation, what are separate property assets in a legal separation, and then what that looks like moving forward.
Thank you, Christy. Gina, would you like to add anything?
Sure. I think there's two categories of why people would file for a legal separation. The first is that the marriage is dead. The relationship is over, but for strategic reasons, the parties do not want a divorce. So that could be, as Christy indicated, health insurance. The person perhaps doesn't qualify for their own health insurance policy for a couple years because they're waiting to get Medicare. Or perhaps that person has some sort of a pre-existing condition and healthcare coverage is going to be outrageous. It could also be that the marriage is dead, but the person says, look, I know that my husband or wife wants a divorce. I, for my religious reasons, am not going to be the one to file for divorce. I want to file for legal separation. Another reason, as Christy indicated, is that you have to be married for 10 years to get Social Security benefits from a spouse. So they file for legal separation because it will allow them to acquire those benefits later on. The other reason Christy indicated is that the marriage is still intact, but there needs to be some protection. My husband has gotten a DUI, and I'm worried about losing assets, him getting in a wreck and causing somebody to sue us, and now we lose all the assets. It could be other reasons that are financial. There's maybe some lawsuits or liabilities that are out there, and the person wants to protect themselves. Sometimes they're even living in the same house. They still have a relationship, but they need to protect themselves.
Thank you, Gina. Colleen, with that said, if people are unsure about a divorce, should they start by filing for a legal separation?
Well, I think that all goes to the point what Christy and Gina were saying. If you're unsure, you need to talk to an attorney and figure out what each one will serve you, I guess, and really weigh your options. So I don't think that's just an automatic, I'm not sure, so we're going to start with the legal separation and go from there. There's a lot of things you have to consider, and that's why it's imperative for you to come in and speak with an attorney to flesh all those things out.
And one of the most common reasons I hear is that, is it cheaper to file for a legal separation than it is for a divorce? Is that true?
No, that's not true. Not necessarily true, I should say, because we're going through all the same motions as a divorce. We're dealing with all the same issues as a divorce. So there's still the same amount of court hearings for the most part. We're still filing the same amount of pleadings and having to determine spousal support and child support and custody and visitation if there's children, and then property division. So in short, legal separation isn't just a quick and dirty alternative necessarily to a divorce.
So if I understand you correctly, if someone files a lawsuit for a legal separation, it may turn into a divorce even if the other party, if one of the parties does not want it. Is that fair to say?
That's exactly fair to say, because that happens too, is that somebody files for legal separation and the response, you still have to file and serve your request for a legal separation on the other party, and then the other party or your spouse then responds and says, I want a divorce, and they file for the divorce. So yes, and I think this is a short answer to your question.
Okay, so then let me shift gears a little bit. If I'm the party and I decide to file for a legal separation, do I, and down the road decide that, you know what, legal separation isn't what I want a divorce, do I need to refile for the divorce?
There's going to be paperwork that you're going to have to file. So we're going to have to take a look at it. If that's where you started and you had a legal separation and now you want a divorce, so we would, as your attorneys, see where you are. And yes, there's going to be additional paperwork that's going to need to be filed to finalize and convert it to a divorce.
Thank you, Colleen. Gina, I'm going to go back to you. So are the issues addressed in a legal separation prejudicial, meaning that if I file for a legal separation and then down the road decide to file for a divorce, do the same issues reopen?
Well, let's back up a bit. If you file a judgment for legal separation, you may or may not have to file an additional lawsuit called a divorce. It depends on the terms of the judgment in the legal separation. So many times, very frequently, people do not put the magic language in the legal separation, so it results in filing for a divorce. However, the legal separation, all those orders are what we call with prejudice. What that means is they're set in stone. So for instance, if, let's say, child support was heard in the legal separation and a new lawsuit is filed, I've seen this before. I've seen where, let's say there's a legal separation in Montana, and then now the party is in California and is filing a divorce in California. You don't get to just ask for custody of your children living in Montana because now you're filing a divorce in California. Anything that's in the legal separation document has to either be changed, if it can be, such as custody in the legal separation lawsuit, or if it's something that cannot be changed, such as property rights, they're set in stone in that legal separation. So in short, if a legal separation has been filed and there's a judgment, and now there's a divorce that's been filed, the only thing that's contained in the divorce is what we call status, meaning the only thing you get to do in the divorce action is ask for a divorce and terminate your marriage.
So if I understand you correctly, be very careful with what your legal separation judgment says or orders, because you may not get to reopen and readdress those issues when you file for a divorce. Is that correct?
You will not be able to reopen those issues. That is correct.
Okay, perfect. And then I think Colleen kind of addressed it a little bit, but I want to make sure it's clear for the viewers. Does the other side have to agree to the legal separation in order for the case to proceed as a legal separation? Gina.
Oh, I apologize. Yes, absolutely they must agree, which is why it is so important not to file paperwork unless you're sure the marriage is over. Either you've got an agreement between you and your spouse that you need to protect some assets, and that's the reason why you're filing, or the relationship is over with, because it could easily turn into a divorce. simply because both parties must agree to a legal separation.
And if one party files for a legal separation and the other responds asking for a divorce, does divorce trump the request for a legal separation?
Always. The divorce is always the controlling request.
Perfect. Thank you. Christy, I want to switch back to you and talk about the specifics. So in a legal separation, are there support orders made? Does one party still get spousal support?
Absolutely, B. Absolutely. And I want to emphasize again what Gina stated, which is drafting is key in this regard. If I can think of an area, many areas in family law, but this is particularly one of them, where drafting the judgment for a legal separation is extremely important and should be thought out very carefully, because you don't want to assume that you have all of these orders that are ironclad and decisions made in this legal separation judgment, only to find out maybe years later that your rights aren't protected the way that you thought they were. It is an area I would say that, you know, going to a self-help center is not a good idea. You really need to consult legal advice and have an attorney draft it, because of the pitfalls and concerns later on down the road. But yes, to answer your question, spousal support absolutely can be addressed in a legal separation.
And if I understand you correctly, the language, sorry, there was a slight echo. The language can make a huge difference between the filing of one lawsuit versus two lawsuits.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, so what about, I know we talked about the fact that you can get spousal support in a legal separation. What about future debt or future properties?
Well, again, it goes to the drafting, and it's completely contingent on what the legal separation judgment stated. So the idea is to sever all of the fiduciary or financial relationships between the parties, which is you can deal with if you own a home, for instance, how that is to be divided, what is to be done with it, debts of any kind, say for instance you have credit debt, et cetera, et cetera. So the idea is to define and basically to divide whatever those liabilities are. But if there's a window open, then if and when the divorce rolls around, then the court could come back and say, well, I guess let me back up just a hair. Once you do that, then it's really important for you to not muddy the waters again, if you will. For instance, if you're going to purchase a home with this person again, that's a joint asset. That could be construed as a community asset during the periods between legal separation and divorce. So again, you have to be very careful after the fact, refer to your judgment and make sure that you don't muddy the waters in that regard, so it does make it as simple as possible.
So let's stay on the topic of if a legal separation is filed and a new divorce has to be filed in the future, how long is the marriage for the purposes of the divorce?
Well, the marriage is the date of your legal separation as defined in it. So you're separated at that time. So that should cut it off. And then if you continue to live together, whatever you continue to reside together, then that shouldn't count. Again, but the language in the judgment has to be very clear about all that.
And can someone ask for spousal support in the divorce if there's no spousal support that was requested in the legal separation?
You can always ask, B. You can ask for anything. We can't control how things are filed, but I doubt they would be successful on that.
Gina, would you like to add anything?
Just one other point. This is a common question that we get. If, let's say that the parties continue to live together after the legal separation, any buying of new property in one person's name would go to that person. So for instance, me and my spouse are legally separated. I purchase a home. My spouse is living with me. It's my home only on title. We file for divorce. It's my home. If we were still married, as in pre-legal separation, that home would be half of my spouse's, even if his name was not on there in many circumstances. So it cuts off all future rights. That's the purpose of a legal separation. It cuts off all future right to spousal support, all future right to property, all future obligation of any debts.
Thank you, Gina. Colleen, anything to add to that? Or about the topic of legal separation in general? Anything that I did not address or ask?
No, I don't think so. I think that I just like most common question I get is, am I legally separated right now versus am I separated? So again, so legal separation is you're filing for that, and being separated from your spouse is altogether different. But no, I don't have anything else to add.
Thank you. Christy, anything to add?
I'm kind of biting at the bit. I think there's one other element here that is a question that I get often. So I want to separate from my spouse. I filed my legal separation, or maybe I haven't. If I leave the home, or if I leave my children there, am I abandoning my rights of any kind? And the answer is no. I get that question more than any other question. Well, can I leave? If I do, am I waiving my right to my community interest or whatever interest I may have in a home? If I leave my children there, is that going to somehow hurt me in terms of abandonment? And no, that is absolutely not the law. You can leave. In fact, I encourage it, because when you go through these times, we had another podcast last week about domestic violence. And I always encourage people to find somewhere else to reside, because this is a difficult process. Emotions are so high. So if you can find somewhere else to go, feel free to do that. It'll probably be better during this process, but in no way do you sever any liability or strike that, any interest you would have in any property.
Thank you, Christy. Colleen, I want to get back to you real briefly because I just received the question. And the question is, what's the difference between being separated and legal separation? Can you give us that distinction?
Sure. Well, legal separation, you have a document that says, you know, you have your judgment for legal separation, or you're going through a process of legal separation. It's a request from the courthouse that you're getting. Being separated from your spouse, as Gina was saying, like, that people separate for a variety of reasons, that your relationship is dead, that you can't resuscitate it, or that you're taking some time apart, you've got financial issues you have to work through. It's not a finalized thing. It's like a state that you're in, versus, again, like legal separation is a document that you have from the court that's been filed with the court, that goes through property division and support issues and things along those lines.
So how do I know if I'm separated?
I'm sorry?
How do I know if I'm separated?
That you're separated. Well, I guess, I mean, if you're legally separated, you have your judgment that's received back from the court that says you have a final judgment on that issue. If you and your spouse being separated, that either you don't have to be physically apart from one another, but that you've decided that your relationship is over, there's nothing else that you can do, that therapy is not going to work, that time apart isn't going to work, and you've decided to move forward and either getting a legal separation or filing for divorce. It's a tough issue. It's an issue of a lot of litigation as well. It goes into the date of separation too. But if you have any questions about it, please feel free to call us and we'll walk you through it as well.
Thank you. Gina, can you hear me?
Yes.
Anything to add?
Sure. Date of separation is defined by a final break in the marriage. There is a full and complete breakdown of the marriage. Nothing can save the marriage. No passage of time, no counseling, no outside help can save the marriage, and somebody has taken an overt act towards ending the marriage. That could be moving out. It could be filing for divorce, but usually not. It could be in closing bank accounts, filing taxes separately, going out and dating outside people, moving into a bedroom in the home. It requires both to be defined as separated. That would be your date of separation.
So do I have to tell the other side? Do I have to convey that to the other side?
I would say yes. I would say that's part of the overt act, because if you're hiding it, if you're concealing it, how are you taking steps to end the marriage? I think the very most basic thing you do is tell the other side, I want a divorce. On the flip side, though, it's very common that couples tell each other for decades, I want a divorce, and no act is taken. So you need to also take some sort of an act, like I said, moving into the downstairs bedroom or getting an apartment.
Thank you, Gina. Christy, any final comments? I think we're reaching the limit on our podcast. Any final comments on the topic of legal separation?
Well, yes, I think the distinction needs to be made, and I always say it this way. Filing for either a legal separation or divorce, you don't do it to fire what I call a warning shot to the other side, because you may not be able to control the ramification. I think Colleen made a really good distinction about time apart versus what Gina said about going and acting on it in some manner. So I think if you're just doing this to fire a warning shot, it's really a bad idea. So you need to be sure of what you want. You need to come in, you need to tell us your facts so that we can assist you in a way that's going to be strategically better for you.
The takeaway, Bishoy, is I don't think you file for legal separation to get the other side to appreciate you.
Yeah.
To give the other side an ultimatum or to fix the marriage. You file for legal separation because the marriage is already broken.
And if I understand you three correctly, it's legal separation is not for everyone. There's a lot of technicalities, there's a lot of details that need to be hashed out or hammered out in the document that is being filed with the court, and to make sure that both parties are protected.
Right.
It's not for most people, because you go through all the pains and aches of a divorce, you go through all the expense of a divorce, but at the end you're not divorced.
Right.
So there has to be a true benefit to filing the legal separation over the divorce, and it needs to be well thought out long before you retain an attorney.
Thank you. And I do want to thank all three of you for taking time out of your day. I urge our participants and our viewers to consult with an attorney if you're contemplating a legal separation versus divorce. As the legal panel has said time and time again, it's a little more complex than it seems. And there's a lot of, I don't want to say tricky, but there's a lot of things and issues that need to be addressed prior to the filing. Again, if you have any questions, please continue to send them to us. This podcast will be posted on our social media website. If you have any questions, call us at 951-587-0505, or you can email us at info@temeculadivorce.com. Or last way is you can access our website, temeculadivorce.com, and you can request a consultation there. Again, thank you three for taking the time out of your day, and God bless everyone.
God bless.
Bye.